Good morning. It is Sunday, March the 14th, and this is The Drill. The Daily Declaration for Spiritual Warfare. I will cleanse your life from secret faults. My child, be aware of the danger of trying to hide your faults or actions from me. For I see the hidden secrets in your heart. Nothing can be hidden from the light of my presence. You were once darkness, but now you are light in me. Live as children of light, for my light consists in all goodness, righteousness, and truth. And find out what pleases me. Have nothing to do with the fruitless deeds of darkness, but rather expose them. Everything exposed by my light becomes visible, for it is light that makes everything visible. Be very careful how you live, not as unwise as wise, making the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. Prayer declaration. Lord, cleanse my life from secret faults. I renounce secret and shameful ways. I will not use deception, nor will I distort the word of God. The only thing that I will hide in my heart is the word of God, so that I might not sin against you. Amen. Okay, I'm Ron, your host, and welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and I'm the only true conservative in the United States today. So today on the program, we're going to have Tucker-Carlson, Optics, Chapter 3 of the Ten Commandments of Progressive Christianity, and an article from the American Conservative magazine called Whites and Reds when we come back. I think this is a good point or good time to say or remind people that as a true conservative, we don't go looking for trouble. I've said it about President Trump, and I say about any other president that they have plenty of resources. They don't need me to defend them, even though I may feel like doing it. Now we have a similar a situation in which Tucker-Carlson of Fox News is being, attacked, for lack of a better term, or is involved in it seems like it's a back and forth. I don't even know how to describe it it's not an argument, it's not a debate. It just seems to be this tit-for-tat, back and forth kind of situation with the military, with about women in the military or something, I don't know. But the point is that although I'm not generally going to try to defend the military, again, they're going to, they can defend themselves. Multi-billion-dollar budget, so they don't need my help for it to do that. And it's tempting sometimes to defend journalists or news people that we assume are right of center anyways, if not conservative, such as Tucker-Carlson and on Fox News, because there's so few of them. And so that when the military comes out and denigrates or I can't even say denigrate, really. They make an issue out of the fact that Tucker Carlson hasn't served in uniform a day in his life. I'm not sure exactly what that's supposed to mean. But anyways, we get into this back and forth where apparently Tucker Carlson criticized the military for certain things, and the military has decided to respond. Instead of having whoever their public affairs person is come out and make a statement and be done with it, they have senior enlisted advisors or that rank come out and take shots, so to speak. Kind of make fun of, I guess, Tucker Carlson for not having served in uniform. And I'm guessing what they're trying to suggest is that he has no business criticizing the military until and or unless he has served in the military. And anyways, either way, I'm not going to have anything to do with it. Seems to be a big deal in the media. It's on Twitter, and Brian Suits on his show is talking about it also, and how he feels about how seems that he doesn't much care for the military going after a civilian journalist. But like I said, for me, I'm out. I have to, and every true conservative needs to do the same thing. Stop and analyze before you get involved and become reactive. Where every time you see something on Twitter or you hear something on the radio or television that you're going to get upset and start reacting to it, stop and think about it first and ask yourself, do I really need to get involved in this situation? This doesn't appear to me to be a liberal versus or socialist versus conservative issue. I haven't done a lot of research about it to figure out what's going on here, and I'm not going to bother with it. A lot of it is the decision. You have to make a decision as to what you're going to get involved in and what you're not. Is I guess the short strokes on this. I'm not making this as clear as I'd like to, but I'm not going to get involved in it. Tucker Carlson has plenty of resources with which to. He has a show that is like the number one show on cable, apparently. So he's got plenty of resources with which to deal with any criticisms or slights or whatever that come from in any direction, whether it comes from the military, comes from the White House, or it just comes from rank and file lefties. Okay, so he doesn't need my defense. He doesn't need me to defend him. And the Pentagon certainly doesn't need me to defend them either. So, and I don't see that there's an issue here that's worth commenting on, that that needs to be explained, or or that there's some kind of confusion that needs to be clarified. It's between whatever the issue is. It's between Tucker Carlson and at least for the time being, the United States military. Good luck to each of them. Along the lines of optics, because I was thinking about Berkeley in the 60s and Mario Salvio, who was the leader of the so-called leader of the student movement, I think it's called the free speech movement. And so there was the president of the university called a meeting, and so he, to explain what the university was going to do about the student protests, their demands and whatnot. So he goes through that, and at the end of it, he walks off the stage. Now, and Mario Salvio happened to be up on the stage at the same time. I guess he was invited to be there on the stage, but he was instructed, you're not going to have anything to say. And supposedly he agreed to that. So the university president makes this is what we're going to do, not do, we'll accede to these demands, but not these other ones. And then he walks away. The university president does. Mario Salvio walks to the microphone. And this has been being filmed because of the news crews are filming this. And you see Mario Salvio walking to the phone, and he's looking like he's very thoughtful. He's thinking about something, he's going to say something important, get the microphone and say something important. All of a sudden, he's surrounded by several police officers who grab him and haul him off the stage, bundle him off the stage. Now, again, it turns out whoever's watching this on the news doesn't understand that there was an agreement and that Mario Salvio is not going to speak. He's just there to listen. And Mario Salvio is about to lie. He's about to go back on his word not to speak and try to provoke more problems. And so what it looks like is that the university is exactly what it is that the students have been claiming it is. That it's brutal and that it's power hungry and that it is insecure, etc. And that the university doesn't see the students as students but as a threat to their power structure, etc., etc. And so that's the optics of it was absolutely horrible. If you ever get a chance, try YouTube and see if you can see, put Mario Salvio in there in the search terms, and you should be able to come up with this clip. And the optics of it is horrible. The university looks really bad. But this is back in the day when television was brand new. People didn't think in terms of optics. They didn't think about that. Another optic from the 60s was there was lots of protests. There were lots of riots during the 60s. Far more riots in the 60s than we have today. And so one of the things that happened, one of the responses to all this rioting and insecurity was that the governors of many states called out the National Guard and would send them to various universities to help to maintain order. So there's pictures or film and still pictures of the hippies, the flower children, which was one of the nicknames for them, the flower children, that when confronted by a line or a wall of uniformed National Guard troops with their guns standing at attention, then these flower children would walk up to them and put flowers in the barrels of their gun. Interesting optics. You know, you have the establishment with its military, and then the left-wing hippies who are trying to create socialist paradise that are presenting themselves as just, hey, we're peaceful people. You know, we just want peace. So now, along the reasons that I'm bringing this up is that let's look at the optics of what went on January 6th and subsequent to January 6th. One of the things that happened is after January 6th is then all of a sudden Nancy Pelosi gets busy and puts up razor wire and brings out National Guard troops to ring the Capitol. And so the right, conservatives, particularly conservatives of my age that remember the optics of the 60s, could have done the same thing as the flower children. Create a rally and get everybody to get flowers and go and approach those National Guard troops and put flowers in the barrels of their gun. Do the same thing. And much better optics that way. Also, it makes for, when she creates a ring of steel around the Capitol. She claims also, by the way, to be all about democracy. This is a democracy, and we can't have somebody trying to overthrow our democracy. She keeps saying things like that. Well, my question to her or statement to her is, it's not a democracy. Democracy out of the barrel of a gun is not a democracy. Okay, so good bumper sticker, good slogan for a T-shirt. Hey, Nancy, any democracy that purports to come out of the barrel of a gun is not democracy. Because really what the left is doing is they're trading places. It could be considered the Cartman drama triangle writ large. And the left is now the establishment. They were in the 50s and 60s on the outside. The conservatives ran the joint. And it was the radicals of the 60s that desired to overturn that. which they have done to a large degree. Not through their protests, not by putting flowers in guns, but by elections and the results of those elections. So they are now the establishment. Nancy Pelosi is the establishment. Jane Fonda is part of the establishment. All the people that used to be radicals in the 60s, the flower children, the hippies, are now running the joint. They're the ones that are the establishment. They are the ones that are the Nixons of our time. They're the ones that are trying to conserve something. And they're trying to conserve whatever gains, political, socio-political gains that they think that they have made over the past 50 years. And the people that are true conservatives are now in the position of being the revolutionaries, the ones that are trying to overturn the so-called status quo and put a stop to their so-called, the left's and establishment's so-called movement. The Ten Commandments of Liberal Christianity, Chapter 3. The work of reconciliation should be valued over making judgments. One of the hallmarks of progressive Christianity is that it focuses less on the way humans relate to God and more on how humans relate to humans. This concern is evident in the third commandment. The work of reconciliation should be valued over making judgments. Gully is concerned here with the broken or estranged human relationships. The church should do more to repair and restore those relationships, but in his view is too busy condemning people's behavior. Christians need to stop judgment and start helping. Now, we can begin by acknowledging that the goal here is commendable. Bringing reconciliation to broken human relationships is a fundamental biblical value. The Bible has much to say on topics like forgiving one another, Luke chapter 17, verse 4, being reconciled to one another, Matthew chapter 5, verse 24, Acts chapter 7, verse 26, husbands and wives reconciling, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 11, and the removal of hostility between groups, Ephesians chapter 2, verse 16. Indeed, Gully is correct that reconciliation between humans is an important aspect of Christianity. The problem, though, is how Gully thinks that reconciliation is best achieved. And it is here that he takes a biblical value and puts a decidedly progressive/liberal spin on it. Reconciliation between humans is best achieved, he argues, when the church is less concerned with making judgments. If only the church would get rid of its culture of judgment, start offering judgment and blame, and surrender its fondness for black and white either-or thinking, then it could better help people reconcile with one another. Now, again, it depends on what one means by such statements. If the concern here is merely with the church's overall tone or attitude, then point made. Churches need to be careful, even in the midst of dealing with sin, to be gracious, patient, and charitable. But if these statements mean that the church should not be in the business of calling out people's behavior as sinful or wrong, then that is something very different. Indeed, that sort of approach has several significant problems. Scriptures are packed with examples of God's people calling out certain behaviors as wrong. Jesus did this. Paul did this. And even we are called to do this. Quote, if your brother sins against you, go and tell him his fault, unquote. Matthew chapter 18, verse 15. But at this point, a person might object, but who am I to tell someone they are wrong? I'm a sinner too. Yes, and that's an essential perspective to maintain. But the Bible never requires a person to be sinless before they speak out against sin. Personal perfection is not a prerequisite to standing up for what is right. Otherwise, no one would ever be able to condemn sin, including, as we'll see in a moment, those who want to condemn those who judge. The proper basis for calling something sinful is not personal perfection, but simply whether God regards it as sinful. The great irony here for those who say that we shouldn't judge is that they themselves are judging. They're declaring a behavior to be wrong, in this case, the behavior of judging, while at the same time insisting that we shouldn't declare that behaviors are wrong. Thus, this approach proves to be profoundly inconsistent. It is the rhetorical equivalent of sawing off the branch you're sitting on. In this way, progressive Christianity is very much the product of today's cultural climate. We live in a world that insists more than ever that we should not judge. But we also live in a world that is one of the most angry and judgmental in generations. Like never before, people feel free to express, often quite vigorously, their moral outrage at just about any grievance, as those active on the social media can attest. Yet they remain seemingly unaware of how this behavior fails to square with their professed commitment to not judging. One curiosity of the progressive insistence that we should not be people who judge is that it is selectively applied. When it comes to sexual ethics, for example, we are told we should not judge others. Everyone should be allowed to express themselves as they wish. But when it comes to racism, environmentalism, abuse, or other similar issues, then apparently judging the behavior of others is allowable. Indeed, it is required. The fundamental problem with the progressive approach to judging is that it undercuts the very goal it is trying to achieve, namely human reconciliation. Such reconciliation can only happen when wrongs are acknowledged, owned, and repented of. And in order for that to happen, judgments must be made about people's behavior. And that behavior must really be wrong, not just wrong in someone's opinion. Otherwise, reconciliation is a mirage. We can and do affirm that human reconciliation is an important biblical value, and we can and do affirm that churches should not have a judgmental tone or attitude. They should always operate with grace, patience, and a spirit of love. But none of this requires us to abandon God's clear teaching that some things ought to be declared right and other things declared wrong. That's the proper form of judging. And it is not something to avoid, but something we are called to do. As the prophet Isaiah said, quote, "Woe to those who call evil good and good evil," unquote. Isaiah chapter 5, verse 20. And that was chapter 3 of the book, The 10 Commandments of Liberal Christianity. So I wanted to read the last paragraph of an article by or in the American Conservative, and it's about, let me see if I can find the title here, Whites versus Reds. And it says, "The mostly unknown Finnish Civil War has lessons for America today." So I want to read this last paragraph here, because most of it, the article is about the history, who the whites and the reds were. The reds were, of course, the communists, and the whites ended up beating and defeating the reds, and it was a lot about how they did it and statistics and whatnot. But the main point here is in the last paragraph. What does all this tell an American of today? Quite a bit, because this Civil War occurred right around the time of World War I, back in 1917, 1918. What does all of this tell an American of today? Quite a bit. First, that the revolutionary left will never stop voluntarily. They cannot. To do so contradicts the basic premises of their worldview. Most of all, that human perfectibility is achievable, and that any price, especially a price paid by those who would deny others heaven on earth, is worth paying. Second, for the left, whenever power is not handed to them, those who do hold power are necessarily illegitimate, and any action to strip them of power justified. Third, they can be stopped, because in their nature, their reach exceeds their grasp. But stopping them cannot be done with words, since to the left, words are meaningless. It will always and ever, until their hold on the human imagination is broken, be only possible to stop them by force. This is our future, whether we like it or not. We can hope it will be through the current institutions of order to the extent those are not yet wholly subverted by the left. If not, it must be by some other mechanism, as the Finns found to their sorrow. So now he says that they'll never stop voluntarily. Yes, they will, and they can be if the conservatives are smart about the way you battle the left. One of the things, the way you want to convince people not to become lefties or to act like lefties is not by telling them you shouldn't be a lefty because it's not conservative. That's stupid. Of course it's not conservative. That's the reason they're on the left. What you have to do is be able to show them, to convince them that being on the left is a waste of time. It's not going to result in anything other than frustration on their part. Senseless and useless self-sacrifice. As they become aware of this, the first thing that's going to happen is all of the useful idiots will immediately fade away. They will leave and go looking for something else. Okay, and they may very well come to you as a conservative and say, hey, I'm sick of being a socialist. What's going on with conservatism? That's your opportunity to proselytize, to get them converted, so to speak. And then after that, you're going to be left with the hardcore. But even some of the hardcore are eventually going to realize the truth of the statement that socialism is simply a waste of time. That it hasn't happened, isn't happening now, and will never happen. But even so, even if you're left with only, the people that are so-called down for the struggle, then you're left with an insignificant minority. You end up with the socialism in this country being having the same socio-political impact as the KKK or the American Nazi Party. And that's fine. You still want to, after it's been shown to you that socialism is stupid and a waste of time, and you still want to act like a socialist, it's a free country. Okay. So it can be defeated, and it can be, as he's saying here, is they're not going to do it voluntarily. Yes, they will. You don't have to eradicate socialism in order to defeat it. All you have to do is KKK it. Reduce their socio-political influence to the same size as the Ku Klux Klan has today, and you'll have success. And again, this is all from the American Conservative, current issue for the American Conservative magazine, and it's an article called Whites and Reds. And that brings me to the end of another episode of The Drill. Until next time, be honest, be smart, be beautiful. I'm Ron, and that's The Drill.